In this video, we'll be installing the 6th Element Engineering drop-in intercooler kit for the 2.5 turbo Smart Stream engine found in the 2021 and up Kia K5 GT and Hyundai Sonata N-Line. For this install, you'll need the following tools: a ratchet with a handful of extensions, assorted metric sockets like 8mm, 10mm, and 12mm, a pair of pliers, a flathead screwdriver, scissors or a pair of clippers, and if you want, a shop towel or a large piece of cardboard to protect your front bumper when you remove it. For a Sonata N-Line, you'll also need a cutting tool like a Dremel to cut off 2 plastic tabs. And depending on your level of experience and whether or not you'll be doing this job alone, you'll need anywhere from a few hours to a full day to complete this job. In the box that you receive from 6th, you'll find a product diagram, a 6th Element Engineering sticker, and the drop-in intercooler with pre-installed wire harness brackets. We'll start this install off by getting the car up in the air. Next, we'll remove the bottom engine cover. This is a mix of 10mm screws and pop clips. While you're underneath the car, you'll want to remove the 2 12mm bolts holding on the cold pipe. Next, we'll remove the stock airbox. We'll start this by removing the intake snorkel by pulling up at the entry of the airbox. Now we'll unclip the evap lines by pressing the small tabs on the sides of each line and pulling gently. Then follow the line down and pull it out of its retaining clip. Next, remove the airbox. There's 2 10mm bolts, one out back and one out front. Then loosen the hose clamp with a 10mm socket or Phillips head screwdriver and lift the airbox out of the engine bay to reveal the hot pipe. Now we can disconnect the OEM bypass valve hose by pressing it on the tabs and pulling. Next, we can remove the OEM hot pipe by sliding the metal clips outward into the slots that lock it into the open position. Trace the hot pipe up to the turbo side and repeat the process. Lastly, there's a 10mm bolt that secures this pipe to the valve cover. Once removed, pull the whole pipe out of the engine bay. From here, we'll disconnect the bypass valve solenoid and boost sensor connector. This is a tough area to reach, so take your time here. For the BPV solenoid, push down on the tab and then pull out on the connector. Disconnect the boost sensor by sliding the gray tab backward and then pressing it to release the sensor. In that same area, pull the vacuum line from the BPV solenoid. You may hear a release of air once it's been pulled. Now we can remove the cold pipe from the throttle body. Push the clips to the open position and pull on the pipe. With that, you can remove the entire cold pipe from the engine bay. You may need to manipulate this a bit to get it around the radiator hose. Now we can remove the front bumper from the car. In each wheel well, you'll find an 8mm bolt connecting the front bumper to the fender and 3 pop clips. Just above the grille, you'll find a handful of pop clips and 2 10mm bolts. A good note here is that if you're installing on a Sonata N-Line, you'll also need to remove the DRLs from the bumper. There's a 10mm bolt holding them down on each side of the engine bay. Remove both, and then pop the DRLs off by pulling straight up. Now you can pull off the front bumper. Start from the fenders and work your way towards the headlights. Once the driver's side is loose, gently pull the bumper away a few inches and reach down and disconnect the wiring harness. For this next step, you may want an extra set of hands or a large piece of cardboard or furniture pad to set the bumper down onto. Now you can get a firm grip on the front bumper and pull it straight off the front of the car. Next, we'll remove the OEM intercooler. Start by removing the 2 10mm bolts on the intercooler shroud. Then remove the upper intercooler mounting bracket by pulling the 2 10mm bolts. There are 2 points where the wiring harness is attached to the intercooler. You can remove these with a flathead screwdriver by pushing down from the top and then the bottom, and working its way out. Now you can lean the intercooler back and slide it up and out of the engine bay through the space that the stock airbox occupied. Next, remove the stock intercooler shroud by sliding it out of the bottom of the engine bay. It should flex and bend around the front bumper bar. Now, if installing on a Sonata N-Line, there are 2 small plastic tabs that need to be removed for the intercooler to fit. You'll need a small Dremel or cutting tool to safely remove these tabs. You'll want some safety equipment here, like gloves and eye protection. Be careful, take your time, and be sure not to damage the wiring harness. Now we can move on to prepping your new intercooler. First, swap the gaskets and rubber feet from your stock intercooler over to your new 6th Element unit. Grab the top mount bracket, and you're ready to move on. Slide this new unit down into the engine bay the same way you removed the stock unit. Make sure the rubber feet on the bottom of the intercooler make full contact and are fully seated into the frame. As you tilt the intercooler forward, make sure that the wiring harness isn't being pinched. Tuck this up along the top of the intercooler, allowing it to sit fully upright. If you need to, you can pull on the harness and gently tug it to gain some slack. Now reinstall the top mounting bracket with the OEM 10mm bolts. Then reinstall the wiring harness with the 2 tabs provided by SXTH. Next, we'll reinstall your cold pipe, hot pipe, boost solenoid, bypass valve hose, and air intake assembly. First, reroute the cold pipe into the engine bay by pushing the evap line and throttle body coupler under the coolant line. Slide the clips on the cold pipe out into the open position and insert it back into the throttle body. Once it's connected, make sure your tabs drop back into the closed position. Now reconnect the vacuum line, boost sensor, and bypass valve solenoid. Under the car, reattach the cold pipe to the intercooler with the OEM 12mm bolts. Reconnect the bypass valve hose. Install the hot pipe by reversing the removal process and locking the clips. Install the air box with the OEM 10mm bolts. Then clip the evap hose back into its guide clip and reconnect the evap lines to the intake tract. At this point, you should do a quick double check to make sure that all of your connections are tight and no wiring is being pinched or strained. Here's a quick checklist. Make sure your intercooler is secure with no pinched wires. Make sure your hot pipe is connected. Make sure your cold pipe is secure. Make sure your bypass valve hose is secure. Check your boost sensor, bypass valve solenoid, and vacuum line connections. If all is well, you can reinstall the front bumper. Line up the bumper with the front of the car. If you're doing this alone, it may help to set one corner of the bumper up on top of a box. Don't forget to reach down in behind the bumper on the driver's side and reattach the wiring harness. Work your way from the middle out. A firm push should clip the bumper back in. Be sure to check body lines and watch for any pinches that could damage paint. Reinstall your DRLs, followed by the 2 10mm bolts and handful of push pins above the grille, and then the intake snorkel. Then reinstall the 8mm bolt and 3 push pins on each side of the car. Reinstall the bottom engine cover, and you're good to go. With this new intercooler installed, you can enjoy better boost and lower intake air temperatures for your 2.5 turbo Smart Stream engine. If you have any questions or run into any issues, feel free to contact us at csr@sixthelement.com.